Okay, let's start. Just a quick announcement on midterm exam 1. It will be on 9th of October, Monday, starting at 9:05. So it will be 45 minutes midterm. So there are questions about whether there will be sample codes. There are some sample codes provided for the questions. Similar format as in quiz and in lab as well. And for those who couldn't make it on October 9, you have to take the exam on October 6. The time will be at 10 a.m. It will be at UH 129. And for those people who want to take it on 6th of October, 10 a.m., you must make a request via email by this Friday, September 29. Okay? Without this formal request, we won't be able to print enough exam for you to take it on October 6th. Now, if you miss it for whatever reason, either you are sick or you have a mandatory military training, the weight will go to exams 2 weight. And the exams 2, which is the final exam, will be set on during the exam period, 13 December, Wednesday, again, 45 minutes, starting at 9:05. So this date and time are set by the registrar office. We are not allowed to accommodate any request to take the final exam on another date and time. Okay. Now, any questions on the exams? If not, let's continue with our iterations using for. So basically, for loop is to iterate a certain sequence of statements. That means we repeat this sequence of statements. Now, one thing that we have learned on Monday is the use of the function called range. Okay, this range here will generate integers from start to stop, but does not include stop value. So this is my start value, so it starts at 0. And this is my stop value, which is 4. It doesn't stop at 4. It stops at number before this. So this stop value minus 1. So range 0, 4 will generate integers from 0 to 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. So in particular, we can use it to represent our indices. Okay. So remember, our indices represent the numbering or positions of a list. Okay, and index starts with 0. So if our list has length 11, then we want to generate integers from 0 to 10, which means we are looking at range 0, 11. It will generate integers starting from 0, 1, all the way to this number minus 1, which is 10. Okay, so essentially, if you want to iterate for any list L, if the list variable name is L, if you want to iterate over the indices of the list, you actually iterate over range of length of L. So this represents the stop value. So it will stop as this number minus 1. Okay. And there is no start value. No start values means that by default, it will start at 0. Okay. So if your list name is quiz, if you want to iterate over the indices of this list, you need to generate integers from 0, 1, all the way to length of the quiz minus 1. This is equivalent to iterate over range, length of quiz. Okay. Now, suppose, so this code here for index in length, range, length of quiz, we're gonna do is that it's iterate all the indices. So at the first iteration, index is 0. At the second iteration, index is 1, and so on. So it will print out for each quiz number, what is the corresponding score. So for each index in that iteration, what is the value of the, what is the value at index of quiz? Okay. Now, suppose if you remember, so recall that quiz 0 is not counted towards the final score. Okay, so quiz 0 was used for attendance verification purpose. So we are not interested in quiz 0. So if I want you to display the quiz number and its corresponding quiz score for those that counted towards the final score, okay, then this code here will include quiz 0 because you do range length of quiz, it will generate integers from 0 all the way to the last index. So if I want just to display, say, from quiz 1 to quiz 10, okay? So what should I change here? I just want to display from quiz 1 to quiz 10. So suppose length of quiz is 11. What should I change here? Start at 1, exactly. So I'm going to start at 1 instead. So let's run this. It just means that I did not execute quiz yet. I execute the quiz now. So you're going to start at, sorry, where did I go? We're going to start at 1. Here. Okay. So instead of starting at 0, we start at index 1. Good. Now, in particular, sometimes we're only interested, for example, in the second half of the quiz or the first half of the quiz. So for example, if I want to display the quiz number and its corresponding quiz score after midterms. So starting from quiz 6, include quiz 6, for example. Then, quiz scores from quiz 1 to quiz 6. Include quiz 6. Okay, so what do I need to change here? Quiz 1 starting to quiz 6. So should I put this one? So we say I must include quiz 6, but if you stop at 6, it will not include quiz 6 itself. Okay, so you should stop it at 7. Okay, if you stop at 7, it will generate integers from 1, 2, all the way to 7 minus 1, which is 6. Okay, so which is what we need. So we will have quiz 1 to quiz 6. So it's very important you understand the start and the stop value. Many students make this mistake. They will often put 6 here, even though it includes quiz 6. Okay. Now, we also learned that we can incorporate if statement inside for loop, in particular if we are only interested in certain value that we want to display. Okay. And then today we're going to extend this. For example, in this case, I'm going to run the for loop over all the indices of quiz. And if the score, that means the value of index of quiz is less than 3, I'm going to print out. If it's not less than 3, I'm not interested, for example. Now we're going to use what we have learned to write our program to check whether the password contains a digit. So if you remember, earlier on, we have this code here when we learned about Boolean expression, where you are given a certain password. This is supposed to be input by the user. Okay, and I ask whether this password is valid. The password is valid if it has digits. So if it has digits means that it contains 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, one of them. All right. So earlier on when we learn Boolean expressions, we create 10 Boolean expressions joined by OR. We check whether the string of 0 is in password, or string with the value 1 is in password, or string of value 2 is in password, and so on. Okay, now this require to write 10 expressions, and you need, if you want to be sure, you have to check these 10 expressions correctly. Make sure 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 9 are in there. So can we do this using iteration? Can we achieve this task without having to explicitly write it down properly? Explicitly write down these 10 Boolean expressions. Now, if you look at this here, these expressions and these expressions here, they are almost the same, except with this, instead of 0, now it's 1. And the third expression, instead of 1, is 2, and then 3, and so on. So there is a repetition here. So when there's a repetition, you know that it's iteration. Okay, we can do that by writing iteration. So here's what we're going to do. Okay, so we're going to run for loop. Okay, so we're going to run the for loop. And when you say that I want to iterate something, so iterate using what? In our case, so far we have just learned about for loop, so we're going to run a for loop. And then over what? What you're going to iterate over. So if you remember, look at your previous example. They iterate over, for example, indices, or iterate over elements in the list, or element in a string, and so on. So what are we iterating over? So every iteration, okay, it takes a new value from what you iterate over. So at every single iteration, all right, the index value change to the subsequent value inside what you iterate over, okay? So what I iterate over is something that I want to change at every single iteration. So this will become our iteration. At every single iteration, I will generate these Boolean expressions. I would have this Boolean expression and so on. So what changes is this here, 0, 1, 2. So you know that this will be something I want to iterate over with. Okay, so run the for loop over 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so at every iteration, it will take a new value, which is a subsequent value inside this string. So in the first iteration, it will take the value 0, which is this one. In the subsequent iteration, it will take the value 1, which is this one. And then third iteration, it will take the value 2, which is this one. So as you can see, we basically replicate that, but using running over for loop. Okay, so you run a for loop over this string. Okay, in each iteration, check if the element in the string that you iterate over is in password. Okay, now, so let's do this for every x, every digit in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so let's just print digit first. So you get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. Okay, and you want to check if digit is in password. Okay. If it's in password, what do? You can, for example, print it is valid, or it contains digit. We doesn't have to know which digit it contains. We just need to know whether it contains one digit. Okay. Print password, it contains digit. Okay. Now here's you're gonna think, is there an else statement? So should I do like this? Else print password does not contain digit. Okay, so if you do that, that means that if every single iteration, okay, you want to check at whether 0 is in password or not. So let's run this. Okay, let's just copy this password first. So when you put that, you basically check for each of the digit whether this particular digit is in password. So it says that password does not contain digit and so on. This is not what we want. Okay, we are not interested in checking whether a particular digit is in a password. We want to know whether they exist one. Okay, so in this code here, what we do is more than that. So password does not contain digit, say digit. Okay, so what we did is that we check whether password contains digit 0 in the first iteration, and in the second iteration, we check whether password contains digit 1 and so on. All right, and then it will tell you, does it contains or not? Okay, so in the following code, so in this code here, we check if we check for each digit if digit is in password or not. All right, so it gives us a tons of information. whether it contains 0, whether it contains 1, whether it contains 2, or whether all the way to whether it contains 9. But this is not what we exactly want. We just want to know whether it contains 1. We don't know. We don't care about which one. We just want it to contain 1. So for example, I want to check whether it has digit. Okay. All right. So for example, I create a variable. I can do like this. Has digit is equals to true. If digit is in password, suppose that we write has digit equals to true, else has digit equals to false, and then you print password. So, and then you have an if statement, for example, since you already learned if statement. If has digit, if it contains digit, you print password contains 1 digit, contains some digits, contains a digit, okay? Else, if it doesn't contain digits, you print password does not contain a digit, okay? So let's look at this code here and decide on your own whether this is correct, whether it will give you the right answer. What do you think? So let's look at this with this example, password here. Okay, so we run iterations from 0 to 9 over all the possible digits. And then we check if digit is in password. If it's in password, I wrote has digit is equal to true. Otherwise, if digit is not in password, then I wrote has digit is equals to false. And then I check, and then I have an if statement to say, if it has digit, I'm gonna print password contain the digit, else I'm gonna print it does not contain a digit. So let's run this and you will see that something is not right here. So after I run this code here, with the password initialized to this value, it says the password does not contain a digit. But if you look at this password here, it does contain a digit. Okay, what's wrong here? Is it a string? So this is a string, good, this is a string, and digit is also a string here. So each of these digits here take a value here, which is also a string, okay? So string is not an issue here. So what is an issue? So if you are not sure, always we run iteration manually, okay? So iteration 0, we start counting from 0. At iteration 0, we run line 1. What is the value of digit? 0, which is a string 0. And then you go to line 2. We check whether digit is in password. Check if 0 is in password. Is it in password? No, so it's false. If it is false, did you run line 3 or not? If this expression return false, 0 is not in password, so digit in password is false, then you don't run line 3, you run line 5. Okay, you go to else statement. So you go to line 5 and has digit is set to false. Okay, and then this is part of the for loop. Okay, line 2 to 5 is part of the for loop. You continue to the second value, which is value 1. So you go back to line 1, digit is equals to 1 now, and then you go to line 2, and again, you check if 1 is in password. So is 1 is in password? It's not in the password. If you look at here, 1 is not in password, so it's false. If it is false, you don't execute line 3. Okay, so you go to else statement, execute line 5. So you go to line 5, again, has digit is set to false. All right, and then again, you don't go to line 7 because this is part of the for loop. You go back. Remember, when you're in a for loop, you go back to the first, to the line where you execute the for loop. So you go back to line 1. This time, your digit is equals to 2, and you go to line 2 and you check if 2 is in password. So in this case, 2 is in the password. So 2 is in the password, so it's true. So when it is true, do you execute line 3 or line 5? Sorry? line 3, good. So if this expression is true, you execute line 3. If this expression is false, you execute line 5. So you go to line 3 now, and set has digit now is to true. Okay, and you don't stop there, you continue. All right, digit now is equals to 3, and you go to line 2, and then you check if 3 is in password. Okay, so let's see, 3 again is in password, so it will be doing the same thing. That will be true, and then because it's true, it go to line 3 instead of line 5, and has digit is set to true. All right, and again, you don't stop here, you continue. Line 1, digit now is equals to 4, and you go to line 2, subsequent line 2, and then you check if 4 is in password. Now this time is false. 4 is actually not in the password. There is no 4 in our password here. Okay, so if it's false, do we execute line 3 or line 5? Line 5, good. So we execute line 5, and has digit is set to false. And then you continue and so on and so forth. Line 1 is digit equals to 5, and so on. Now, if you look at this, the iteration next value is 5. 5 is not in, so has digit is equals to false. 6 is not in, has digit is equals to false. 7 is not in, has digit is equals to false. 8 is not in, 9 is not in, has digit is equals to false all the way down. Okay, so in particular, okay, in line 1, where the digit is equals to 9, okay, and line 2 check if 9 is in password, and which is false, so it will execute line 5, and so now has digit is set to false. So what is the final values of has digit? It has changed several times from false to true, and stay as true, and then false, and all the way down to the final value, which is false. That's why your final value of has digit is false at the end of the loop. So after you finish the loop, the value of has digit is equals to false. Because it is false, it says that password does not contain the digit. Okay, so this code doesn't give us what we want. Okay, because 1 is set to true, it doesn't stay as true. It changes if there are subsequent digits, they are not in the password. All right, what we really want is that initially it can be false, but once it's set to true, it has to continue set to true, because we only concern whether it has a digit. We doesn't care whether the last digit is in the password or not. All right, so here in the following code, it doesn't give us the right answer. Okay, so we know that to fix this, once we need to be that we need our code so that our code is such that once has digit is set to true, we stop. Okay, we stop iterate. You already know that it has at least 1 digit inside. You already checked, for example, in this case, you already checked that 2 is in password. We already know it has a digit. We stop. We don't care about whether 3 is in there, 4 in there, or any other values in there. We only care whether it has 1. So once you discover 1, you can stop. All right, so we need a way to stop iteration. Okay, we need a way to stop iterating it, and that's the code called break. Okay, break is a command used to stop the iteration early. The moment break statement is executed, the iteration will stop. All right, so here we're gonna fix this. All right, so once you have has digit is equals to true, all right, you're gonna break. Okay, so once you have once you find, so you iterate over the string from 0 to 9 here. all right? If the particular iteration has a digit that is in password, you set has digit is equals to true, and then you break it, you stop running, okay? So it will continue to run. Okay, so it will run until here. It will run until here. Okay, so let's see. So execute it. So line 1, you check the value of digit is equal to 0. Check if 0 is in password is false. So if it's false, there's nothing. There is no else statement here. Okay, and that's the end of the loop. And you go back to the beginning of the loop. Check line 1, digit is equals to 1. Line 2, check if 1 is in password. Again, it's false. Okay, this is an if statement, not an if else statement. Okay, so if this is true, you execute line 3 and 4. If it's not true, that's the end. And you go back to the loop. And again, digit is equals to 2. Line 2, check if 2 is in password, which is true. 2 is in password. So now you execute line 3. So line 3 has digits will be set to true. And then you execute line 4. So after line 3 is line 4, which is a break statement. Break, which means you stop the iteration. Okay, after you stop the iteration, you don't go back to line 1. You stop completely. You go to line 6. Okay, you go to line 6, check if has digit. If yes, print something else, print something else. Okay. All right, so that's it. So basically, the moment you hit that you found a digit that has that is inside the password, you set has digit equals true, and then you break. And as we have executed, it gives us the right answer. Okay, so far seems good. Okay, but is it really correct? I need to think about it here. If you remember correctly, when we talk about creating a variable inside if statements. So let me just go back to here. So when we talk about if statement, right? I put a remark earlier on. So if you create, if a variable is created inside an if statement, if the if statement is false, the variable is not defined. Okay, so let's run it one time to check what happened when we have a password that doesn't have a digit. All right, so let's run this code here with a different value of password. Okay. All right, suppose this password does not have any digit. All right, and we're gonna run this code here. And it gives me name error. Has digit is not defined, which is exactly what I mentioned before. If you create a variable inside an if statement, if the statement is never true, it's always false, then the variable is not defined, which is exactly what happened here. So from 0 to 9, when you run the iteration, none of this digit here actually is in password. So this line 3 here never get true. Digit is never in password. So this expression is always false. Because it's always false, line 4 and line 5 never get executed. If it never get executed, has digit is never defined. So when you go to line 7 and execute if has digit, you got a name error because it's not defined yet. Okay, so how do we fix this? So just like before, you always initialize its value to some value before the if statement. Okay, so here, not just before if statement. Okay, we're gonna do it before the for loop. Okay, so before the for loop, so the following code give us name error because hash digit is defined only in the if statement. So if the if statement is never true, it's always false. Okay, line 4, which define hash digit is never defined. Okay, so to fix this, we need to initialize a hash digit outside the if statement. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Okay, so password is equal to this. First, we set hash digit is equals to false. So we assume that it doesn't have digit. Okay, hash digit is equals to false. If we found one, then we flip it. Hash digit now becomes true. And then we stop. Okay, so we initialize hash digit to be false. Okay, we run an iteration to check if a digit is in password. If yes, we set hash digit to true now. And break the iteration. That means we will never change it back. Once we change hash digit from false to true, we break, we never change it again. And now if we run it, it doesn't have the name error anymore because hash digit is defined, okay, before the if statement. In fact, it's defined before a for statement. And then we make it false first. If you found one, you set it to true. And since this password does not have a digit, it's say hash digit is false, remain false all the time. This was never true. It remains false all the time, so the password does not contain a digit. All right, good. Now we have our finalized code here. I'm gonna ask you, for example, earlier on we talk about hash digit. All right, we also talk about hash alphabet. Okay, so say write a program to write a program. So you are given password. Write a program to check if password contains alphabet. Okay, now before I want you to think about it first, but before we do that, let's look at this code here. Okay, we have digits that we need to run from 0 to 9. And if you look at this here, it requires me to write 10 digits, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And if you know me, you know that I don't like to write such a tedious, explicit things, 10 digits here. So is there a way for me to not writing this 10 digits here explicitly? Because if I write it, I really need to make sure that every digit is inside. I might make a mistake. So is there a way to write this using, for example, range? If you recall, okay, so recall range 10 generate integers from 0 to 9. Good job. So can we use this instead of explicitly write down 0, 1, 2, 3 all the way to 9? Can we use range 10 to help us generate this integer? So let's try it. Okay, for digit in range 10. What do you think? Does it work? Suppose I try this 0. Okay, so 0 is in there. If I run this, I get an error. What's this error means? This is error that you definitely have seen before. It's called a type error. What does it mean? Exactly. So your password is a string, but what is your digit here? It's an int. So you are checking whether an int is in a string, which is not a right type to be put as an int operator. For int operator, both type must be the same. So how do I do to change it? Typecast, good job. Okay, so integers from 0 to 9. However, integer, so if x is an integer, I can't do x in password. So I can't do x is in password. All right, because there will be type error. So how do I fix this? Okay, to fix this, we're gonna do typecasting. Typecasting from int to string. All right, how do I do type int to string? So again, we just do string. So whatever you want to type. So if you want to typecast it to string, you type string, the value of x. Okay. So if digit is an integer, we can't do digit is in password. So we're gonna do string digit. All right. So digit is in int, you're gonna typecast it to string. So here's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna check if the string of digit is in password. And now when we run, we are good to go. Okay, so what's the advantage is that I use range 10 so that I don't have to generate integers from 0 to 9 myself. All right, so this, I know that it's definitely okay. It's generated by the computer. And then I make sure that it is of type string. So I do if string of digit is in password. Okay, so now let's go look at another example. You are given some password, write program to check if password contains alphabet. So let's use this. In fact, let's use this. Okay. All right. So now instead of has digit, I'm going to change it to S alphabet. Right. Now, what do I need to change here? Instead of checking digit, what do I need to check? What are all the possible alphabets? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. Okay, and then you check if X is in password, has alphabet, is equal to true, break if it has alphabet. Password contains an alphabet. Does not contain an alphabet. Okay, now here, this is what we change. Instead of checking digit, we're checking alphabet. But here, remember, here I'm writing explicitly 26 alphabets from A to Z. Okay, is there a way to do like this from range 10, generate integer 0 to 10? Is there a way to do so? Okay, so we ask the questions. Is there a way not to write 26 alphabets from A to Z? Okay, can we use like range 26 because there are 26 alphabets? Can we use range 26? Okay, but you know, range 26 will give us what? Integers. Generate integers, not alphabets that we want. Okay, so we are missing one step here. We need to convert integer to its corresponding alphabet. Okay, so we need to be able to map integer to alphabet. All right, this is something that you will learn in the later part of the course. Okay, you will learn how to do this in the later part of the course. Okay, when we talk about character encoding. Okay, so it turns out every character has a number represented by it, and hence we can use range to generate the number corresponding to these characters and allow us not having to write A to Z explicitly. Okay, here, for example, I give you a password like this. This definitely contains alphabet. So I'm going to check this, but it says that password does not contain an alphabet. Why is that so? Why is that so? Capitalization. So we are checking whether small a is in password, it's not. Small b is in password, it's not. Small c is in password or not, and it's not. So because password only contains capital, like capital alphabet, all these small alphabets that I test, none of them are in the password. So we're gonna learn how to fix this. The code doesn't give the right answer. How should we fix this? I'm kind of running out of time here, so we're gonna continue discuss this in the lab, in the mini presentation of lab. So please watch the mini presentation of lab to continue this. Thank you. So let's prepare for the quiz. Thank you.